Hello everybody, it is I, Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, here with another video about Final Fantasy XIV EndWalker. Today, I may have just cracked the code, I may have just seen through the Matrix. And I think I know, with Pandemonium, the Final Fantasy XIV EndWalker high-end raid tiers will be. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we have the name. Let's set the stage, if you will. Lay down some basic groundwork, some basic facts. We understand, we know that in the promotional art used for the raid tier, Pandemonium, La Habrea made an appearance on a dark background, and I feel like people are really paying attention only, and I mean only, to the actual image. So, let me just pull that up for you right now. Okay, so your boy has done some research. Yeah, I've looked into this. I've done some digging. That means going to a website. So, what a lot of people are focusing on is La Habrea here, because this is his mark, or at least half of it, which is worthy of discussion in and of itself. However, thing that also popped out to me personally was this dark and empty background. Very interesting how the only real person here is La Habrea, and they use him specifically to advertise the new raid tier, Pandemonium. For those who may not be aware, because I certainly wasn't until I looked into this, Pandemonium is actually a recurring place for our Final Fantasy, or at least a few of them. Normally, it's either named mob, that's Pandemonium, or like Pandemonium God or something, from a couple of games. However, for quite a few Final Fantasy titles, Pandemonium, I love saying that word by the way, it's just fun, it rolls off the tongue if you will. Pandemonium is a location in Final Fantasy, that's La Habrea. Don't worry, I'll have the links for all of these sites and links that I'm using throughout this video in the description down below if you would like to follow along with me. So, back to Pandemonium. It first occurred in Final Fantasy II. I never played Final Fantasy II, so I can't tell you much. However, I can look here, it says Final Dungeon, and Satan, Emperor Mateus. These are all things that are throwing, fireworks off into my mind. Ideas are forming. Hypotheses are being postulated, if you will. Except for, like, Emperor Mateus. I know that Mateus, I believe in Final Fantasy XII, I'm gonna have to... Give me a second to pull up that, actually. So, I find it interesting that in the raid tier called Pandemonium, one of the only sources of information we have is that La Habrea, with half his Asian mask, if you will, is used as promotional art. In Pandemonium, where in Final Fantasy II, it had Emperor Mateus, and I believe the last boss or something along those lines. However, if we go to the Espers of Final Fantasy XII, the Scions of Light and Darkness, we will notice something peculiar about Pisces, the fish. He's a fish, but besides that, his element's ice. But who do we see here? La Habrea. Now, just for future reference, if you see here we have Logrif, Matron, Emmett, Selk, Fandaniel, Nabrialis, Igarim, and a whole bunch of other people, Zodiac and Ultima. We will see that a lot of these characters have been in Final Fantasy XIV as Asians, or as gods themselves. However, something interesting. Scion of Light is La Habrea. If we move over to the Scion of Darkness, however, who do we see? Mateus the Corrupt. Now, this could mean literally nothing, which in case, fair play. However, what do we know about Pandemonium, the raid tier in Final Fantasy XIV? That it is supposed to be a totally original story to Final Fantasy XIV. So, bear those thoughts in mind, and that in Final Fantasy XII, La Habrea, who is used in Pandemonium's artwork, has a connection with Mateus, who in Final Fantasy II was the leader or became the ruler by force of Pandemonium, which is the name of the raid tier. We're starting to make connections here. So, what was Pandemonium? It's like this castle of the damned. It was kind of like the capital of hell, if you will. And that's not just a unique aspect of Final Fantasy II. That has been played upon in quite a few Final Fantasies, where maybe it's not the capital of hell, but it looks the part. Like, apparently it makes an appearance in Final Fantasy IX. I haven't played Final Fantasy IX. I will, though, so stay tuned for that, because I might be covering it a bit on the channel. And then, as well, it's the final dungeon of, I believe, yeah, Final Fantasy Type 0. It's the Land of Judgment. So, it's either the land, it's always a location, but it always has this, like, finale-esque feel to it, you know. So, what does this mean? What does this mean? So, I'm not going to say that we're going to the Final Fantasy II version of Pandemonium, or the Type 0, or the Final Fantasy IX version. I'm not saying that, because I think the Final Fantasy XIV Pandemonium will be unique and will be different. Why? Because they said it they pretty much said it would be. That is completely unique and original story to Final Fantasy XIV. So, why do I think this is important? Because I think the themes will be the same. And I think Pandemonium will be a location in the 13th. And I feel that the role quest that we did in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, and if you follow those stories to their current part, and how we are starting to delve and research into the 13th and possibly changing it, I feel that Pandemonium has potentially 2 locations in Final Fantasy XIV. And that's either at the center of the earth, because that's where Final Fantasy II's version of Pandemonium was, because it was in hell, and I believe it was raised from the earth or something along those lines. Correct me down in the comments if I got that a bit wrong. Again, I didn't play Final Fantasy II, so my understanding of that story is, as you know, not complete or remotely good. However, that's my understanding of it, or something along those lines. So, it could be either in the center of the earth and throughout the events of EndWalker, it is raised or something along those lines, and La Habrea is there for some reason, or, in my opinion, which is more likely, is that it's in the 13th. And the La Habrea, a being of, like, darkness in Final Fantasy XIV, as opposed to his 12th counterpart, which was the Sign of Light, when he was absorbed by King Thordan's sword, because it was never really, like, hard confirmed. It was always a little bit open-ended about his fate. I think, with King Thordan's defeat, he may have been sent away somewhere, and maybe he either arrived at the 13th in Pandemonium, or he went there by his own volition. Either way is interesting. However, I feel like expanding the story of the 13th from what we already have established beforehand with the World of Darkness Alliance raid, and the role quests in Shadowbringers. Now, I know people are going to be counteracting this idea with one simple idea. One simple reason. It's that we learned about the 13th more in Shadowbringers because of the role quests, which requires you to have one of every role. And that they're not going to make people have 4 different jobs of different roles just to do the raid content of 6.0, of 6.x. I agree. However, I feel like this could be easily circumnavigated or circumvented by just having, like, by having it so if you did the role quest, you maybe get some expanded dialogue or something along those lines. Or by just giving you, like, a... Or by either, you know, getting rid of the requirement, which is a possibility for EndWalker, and they just strike it from the record. I think that's kind of unlikely. Or they just give you, like, one quest NPC just to give you a recap or, like, a summary of the events. I feel like that's possible. Because that's a massive story arc. I highly doubt they're going to relegate the side quests. You know? I just feel like that's really, really unlikely, and that if we deal with the 13th, it has to be up front in, like, raid content or something along those lines. Because when we went to the 13th beforehand, we needed an alliance raid to even tackle the World of Darkness. I feel like the idea that Pandemonium is either the name that the locals of the 13th call the 13th, or is a place within the 13th that we have to go to for some reason, I feel like that's more likely than anything. And I do not know exactly how La Habrea fits into that story, because we do not have a lot of information. Again, we're just theory crafting because it's fun. We could be wrong, we could be right. It doesn't matter because we find it fun here. But now for my wild theory. Depending upon how they want to use Mateus, if he's there at all, I feel like if Mateus is the... If they have a character named Mateus be the ruler of Pandemonium, then La Habrea might be on our side. Like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Or something along those lines. Where we have like a working relationship with him because we have to overthrow Mateus. Or something along those lines. I can see that being a storyline. Or La Habrea is the leader of Pandemonium, and we have to help Mateus overthrow him. Kind of like how Emperor Mateus became the ruler of Pandemonium in Final Fantasy II. But they did say it would be a unique story, which makes me think, and unique to Final Fantasy XIV. I just don't know to what degree they mean by that, because it could reference Final Fantasy II or 9 or Type 0. But I feel like most of the comparisons, and most of the, if any, inspiration they draw from previous Final Fantasies, I feel like the inspiration will come from 2. Because the theme, just in my opinion, fits with this image more so than the one from 9 or Type 0. 9's a close contender. If my idea that's in the 13th is true, I just don't see it being this one. I think a castle's more likely, which is why I go with 2. Like this design. More so than this like living organism that was apparently in 9. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I think I might be kind of close in my prediction here. I think, based on the information we have now, and we have from previous Final Fantasies, and the information I have specifically, I feel like I'm kind of close in this prediction. It'd be interesting to see, because that would be a really cool location for a raid tier. So yeah, so those are my thoughts, my predictions, my theories, my theory crafting. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more content. I know I would appreciate it. Stay safe out there. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Pandemonium. I can't help it. It's just fun to say.